Okay, this is the rest of the news. My name is Frank Simon. Our special guest today is Ed Holloway, former state representative, and we have a tremendous program. This book, which some of you cannot see, but we're trying to get it on the air, is called Stealth Invasion by Leo Hohmann. And this is one unbelievable book. It talks about the Muslim invasion. Leo, are you there?
I am. Hello, Dr. Simon.
Hello. We sure are good to see you. Ed Holloway, a former state representative, is here with us. There's so much in here. I want to ask you a few questions if I could.
Absolutely.
It says here 25 times in the Quran, it says kill Christians.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Christians, Jews, non-Muslims in general are considered fair game. The end game for the Islamic faith, if you read throughout the Quran and the Hadith, is domination. You can argue about how they want to pull it off. I would argue that they use multiple methods. They don't all use violent jihad. It's different means to the same end. Go in quite some depth in the book about the Muslim Brotherhood, which I believe is the leader of this global Islamic movement to dominate nations worldwide. And part of the Muslim Brotherhood mission statement, is about spreading Sharia law around the globe. They're very open about it. Now, they will say that they're nonviolent, and a part of the Muslim Brotherhood does work completely in nonviolent ways, and that is the Muslim Brotherhood, the face of the Muslim Brotherhood that we see here in the United States. They don't walk around in turbans and and robes and whatnot like we see the Saudis. They are on Capitol Hill every day lobbying our congressmen in suits and ties. They're considered part of the Washington establishment.
Here on page 29, it says that documents were obtained from the Muslim Brotherhood showing that they have a secret plan to take over America. That was in the Holy Land Foundation trial.
It was presented in the Holy Land Foundation trial. That's correct. In 2008, that trial was shut down by the Obama administration, even though it was a highly successful trial in rooting out a lot of these organizations that have ties directly or indirectly to the Brotherhood and are funding Hamas, sending money to Hamas, which is a designated foreign terrorist organization, according to our U.S. State Department. Many people call CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, the U.S. branch of Hamas. It's simply not much of any difference, and they've been working all as part of the same team for decades. And it's about time that we wake up in this country and realize that these men in suits on Capitol Hill have a very ominous agenda. They're not always honest about their agenda. You have to really dig into documents and stuff, which I did for this book, Stealth Invasion. But they're not going to tell our congressmen that as they're lobbying for different laws. Like right now, there's a Senate Resolution 118 that has been debated just in the last few weeks, introduced by Senator Marco Rubio, Dianne Feinstein, Susan Collins, and Kamala Harris. And these are all people who should know better, but they don't. And if you look at what this Senate Resolution 118 says, it's all about hate crimes and how the federal government must investigate all of these particular hate crimes. Well, it's hate crimes against certain protected classes.
Right. Okay, Ed.
Yeah, well, Leo, I've been following this issue for a long time. I had an opportunity to spend time in Egypt and Jordan and several of the other countries, and also talking to friends of mine in Israel and some of the people that have been fighting this issue for a long, long time. And I was really impressed with your book, and it covers some details that have been neglected for a long time. And this is the political correctness. And this is where we've been sabotaged from time after time. The Christians have all been, this is a Judeo-Christian country.
Yes.
And it has been forever. But Obama in his first administration made a speech that said it no longer is this a Christian nation.
Right.
People didn't realize how important that single statement was.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was like opening the door to Islam to say,
Yeah.
okay, we're no longer a Christian nation. We don't know what we are. We're just this amalgamation of people. We don't really have any self-identity that we're proud of or is worth stating, but we're not Christian. Well, what are we, President Obama? He didn't really say.
Yeah.
And so that was like opening the door wide open. You know, there was once a very wise sage who said, the barbarians never enter the gates unless somebody holds them open for them.
Yeah. Now,
And
Leo,
that is essentially what President Obama did. He unlocked it and he opened it wide open and said, you're welcome. Come on in.
I got your book, Stealth Invasion, for $4.50, I believe, from the World Net Daily website. Is that right?
There is from time to time specials, but in order to get that special, you have to sign up to be a WND email subscriber, which
I'm already
apparently
that.
we're not already a subscriber, but you signed up to be a subscriber, so they threw in the book as sort of a bonus. But typically, that's not the price, but you can get it on Amazon, I think, for about $17. You can get it on WND Superstore for, I think, something comparable to that. From time to time, yes, WND will run a special on all of its books for new subscribers to its news service.
Well, that's WND, worldnetdaily.com.
That is correct. Dr. Simon, I have had people, I recently was interviewed by Jan Markell. I don't know if you know Jan, but this interview I did with her was a couple of months ago. She reran the interview on YouTube, and I'm telling you, there has been such a response for this book. I've had people calling me and saying, where can I buy 100 books?
Yeah.
Where can I buy 20 books? You know, I want to give them to all my friends. I want to give them to pastors. I want to give them to my local sheriff. Politicians need to read this book, they're telling me. I had no idea when I wrote the book that there would be this kind of demand for this.
Unbelievable. One of the most unbelievable things in your book was what the Muslims did to those little girls in England. I believe you said there was about 1,000 of them.
Oh, more than that.
More than 1,000.
It started out with 1,400 girls in Rotherham, England.
Okay, so here are these little girls.
A couple of, one reporter blew it wide open. Only by luck happened to come across some information that made it undeniable. It had been covered up for years. 20 years this has been going on in England. But there was one contractor that made notes on what was going on in this little town of Rotherham. It was going on all over, but it was the government social services dealing with it, whereas in this one town, there was a private contractor. And this private contractor kept the records. And we found out that it's like 100,000 or more girls.
100,000. The police were on the Muslim side, and the judges and everybody took
social workers, yes.
All for the little girls, they forget about them.
And the media was covering it up.
Okay, we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Dr. Frank Simon. I'm an allergist and family doctor, board certified in both allergy and internal medicine. I specialize in allergy, headaches, sinus, hives, cough, asthma, hypertension, and diabetes. We're located at 1404 Browns Lane, near Norton Suburban Hospital. Our phone number is 895-5088. We can see you tomorrow.
Now, Leo, when we're talking about what's going on in Britain, it's also happening right here in the United States of America. There was a Muslim doctor, a female, in a suburb of Detroit who was performing that operation on young girls. And there was several other places, but the media and everybody else has shut it up. There's never any information about it. I think it was one time that somebody on Fox had mentioned it, but it was all closed up.
Right.
But this intimidation of Christians and Jews and everything else that you can't say anything because it's politically correct, and the infiltration of every agency of government, appointment of people all through the Obama administration has been tremendous.
That's right.
And they cover up everything. Assistant Director of the FBI invited the Muslims into the FBI and did everything but
give him the file.
Robert Mueller, the former head of the FBI under the Clintons,
right,
He was in charge of the FBI, I believe it was in 2011, when they scrubbed the FBI manuals of all references to Islam that were deemed offensive to CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood. It really is remarkable. And now this is the man in charge of investigating President Clinton. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Well, this is another.
President Trump, I'm sorry.
I heard about some of these atrocities a couple of years ago, and I went on the internet and pulled articles that say exactly what your book says. Of course, they were a couple of years old. Here's one from Phyllis Schlafly. Here's one from WorldNet Daily. Here's a Catholic nun that spilled the beans on what's happening. And, of course, in Sweden, all of this, it's all...
I have several original interviews in this book as well. I interviewed an Orthodox Christian nun who grew up in Turkey on the Syrian border. And she tells what her family went through in Turkey. Now, Turkey, you think of that as a moderate Islamic country, right?
Yes.
Ask the Christians in these so-called moderate Islamic countries like Turkey and Indonesia and Jordan. Ask Christians there what it's like to live as a Christian in these countries, in these Muslim-majority countries, not even the worst ones, like Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia, you're not even allowed to be a Christian. There's not a single church in Saudi Arabia. If you're caught with a Bible, it's immediate death penalty judgment upon you. And in many other hard-line Islamic countries, this is the reality. But in countries like Turkey and Indonesia, Pakistan is sort of in between Saudi Arabia and these other moderate. They're worse than the most moderate, but they're not as horrific as Saudi Arabia. To live in Pakistan, you have to watch what you say. You have to watch what you wear. If you're caught saying the wrong thing, that could be considered blasphemous to Islam, which would be anything Christian. You can't say it in public, or you will be jailed, and in many times horrifically punished. You could be whipped or caned or even killed for something you said that offended a Muslim. And it can be the tiniest thing. It doesn't have to be, Muhammad was a camel jockey who raped little girls. It doesn't have to be anything near that to get you in big trouble in a country like Pakistan or Turkey.
You know, I just want to read some of these massacres that have occurred in the United States. Of course, there are many more than this around the world, almost every day. But here's Columbus, Ohio, University of California, Chattanooga, the Boston Massacre, the Fort Hood Massacre. Mentions 4 million Christians killed by Muslims in Turkey.
Well, right. Turkey, 100 years ago, not that long ago, the Ottoman Turks massacred over 1.3 million Armenian Christians.
Yeah. So,
and if you take the Greek Christians, the Syrian Christians, and other Christians in combination with the Armenians, it was over 3 million who were slaughtered in the late 1800s and early 1900s.
Now, this has been going on all the way.
And this is not taught in American public schools.
No.
I don't believe it's taught in American Christian schools, and it should be.
And, you know, I was reading in here where it says they're teaching Muslim propaganda in American schools now all over the country. Muhammad was another Martin Luther King and all this garbage.
Yes, in our public schools today, Muhammad is described and taught to be a sort of Robin Hood figure who stole from the rich and gave to the poor, and a civil rights type Martin Luther King figure who freed the slaves. This is what the indoctrination that our children are being taught about the founder of the Islamic faith. And we know that history teaches us something much different about this man. He was a warlord. He married a 9-year-old girl. You know, all sorts of very unflattering things about him are borne out by the historic facts. But if you mention these things, you're offending Islam, and you violated the Islamic blasphemy laws. I'm sorry, that's Sharia law. Yeah. We don't live under Sharia law in America.
Right. They will punish you, and you will be expelled and everything else if you do, and you even wear a T-shirt that has some reference to Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Well, that was what I meant by you have to watch what you say, but you have to also watch what you wear. in an Islamic country. You can't wear a cross around your neck in public. That's blaspheming Islam.
Right.
Why? They do believe in Jesus, but they don't believe that he was the Son of God, and they don't believe that he died on a cross. So for you to wear a cross around your neck publicly, you are a blasphemer. And in many countries, that is tantamount to the death sentence.
You know, I get to talk about the history of it, and I go back to Thomas Jefferson in the battle with the Muslims and the Barbary pirates.
Pirates, correct.
And all of that.
Those Barbary pirates were an arm of the Ottoman Empire.
Right,
exactly.
Right. Okay, here it says that the American children are taught to say there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his messenger. But the Ten Commandments, the Lord Prayer, are strictly off limits.
Absolutely. Dr. Simon, are you aware that they are also setting up Muslim prayer rooms during Ramadan in many of our high schools in this country?
Now, if you want a copy of these articles, give us a call, 893-2444 or 895-5025. And we'll send you a free copy of this. And don't forget, we went down to Metro City Council and turned in 3,000 signatures and said we do not want Louisville sanctuary city. Well, they paid no attention, so we're going to do more of them. So if you want a copy of this petition, call that same number, 895-5025, and we'll get you petitions. And don't forget to get your copy of this book, Stealth Invasion, that we're talking about with the author Leo Hohmann. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, please don't hold out for the $4.50 special, because that is usually a one-day thing, and it's only for people who are new subscribers to WND. Like I said, I kind of think you lucked out on that one, Dr. Simon.
It's tremendous. This is a must-read book. But one of the best parts about your book is the section about why is all this happening? That there are people who believe in globalism and they feel America is in the way of a one world government, so they want to get rid of America and have more and more people brought in here that hate America, hate the Constitution, hate freedom, and so they're just trying to bring America down. It seems to me the Democrat Party is the main group that's behind all of that. Is that right?
Democrats and I would say all of the Democrat Party has been sold out to this globalist view since about the mid to late 1990s. They used to be for the working man. They traded all that in. Because if you remember, even Bill Clinton, in his first administration, his first term in office, made us several times speeches in which he said that we need to clamp down on the border. We need to make sure that our government, our federal government, cleans out all this illegal immigration to protect the working man, because these low-wage, low-skill immigrants were coming in, taking the jobs of the least skilled, poorer but hard-working American people.
Right.
And so this was not always a Democratic thing. John F. Kennedy was the furthest thing from a globalist. But sometime around Clinton's second term in office, that all changed. AFL-CIO labor union underwent a leadership change around that time, and they changed. They started supporting immigration, mass immigration, both legal and illegal, from the third world. I have to say, though, that it's not just a Democratic program, this globalist agenda. About half, although the entire Democratic Party is now sold out for globalism, about half, at least, of the Republican Party, half or more, is sold out for the exact same agenda, perhaps for different reasons, but still just as much sold out to that globalist agenda, where we send our jobs overseas to the third world, and we bring the third world low-wage, low-skill workers here to our first world country. It's a double whammy on the American worker and the American middle class. That's why wages in this country, in real terms, have not increased since about 1990. Working Americans are making about the same amount of money per year, adjusted for inflation, today as they were in 1989, 1990. Is that not surprising? It should be. but it's not for those of us who are in the working class and not wealthy people. However, the United Nations put out a document in 2000, I have it right up here on my computer screen now, that talked about replacement migration, using migration to replace, quote, declining and aging population.
Right.
And my book talks about this, how the left wing in America has for years been encouraging us in America to have smaller families.
Right.
Use a lot of birth control, family planning, abortion. Then along came the same-sex marriage, which we know those unions don't produce any children. And so they've been encouraging all of this anti-reproduction propaganda.
To get rid of America.
And then they come in when our population is aging and declining and say, oh, we don't have enough workers to support all the retirees, those people on Social Security. Where are we going to get our workers from?
Right.
Well, the United Nations told us in the year 2000 with this document, we will have mass migration, and we will bring in people from the third world, not only Latin America, but the Muslim countries from throughout the Middle East and North Africa. And this is what we've seen going on for the last 15, 20 years.
Right. Leo, you're exactly right, because what's happening is we're having to fight something on two fronts. Propaganda that's being brought up with all of the issues, some of which you just discussed, have been by what I call the Marxist elitists, and people like Soros and others that are funding all these splinter groups that are out there. And they have joined hands with the Muslims because in order to use them to make part of this destruction of the American way of life, and all of that so that they can rebuild it. And we'll deal with the Muslim issue afterwards, but they
absolutely. In my book, I think I describe it as, in the eyes of the left, they use Islam and the Muslim people as a battering ram against Western civilization.
Exactly.
Right.
And it goes back to the old Arab statement of an enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Absolutely. These two groups, the atheist, socialist, globalists, and the international Islamic movement, on their face would seem to have very little in common, because one is a fundamentalist religious type movement, being the Islamic movement, and the other is atheist, but they share a common enemy, which is Christian-based Western civilization.
Here, Leo, you said there have been 380 terrorists in the United States. Okay. I guess we're going to have to break again just a second. If you want this petition to stop sanctuary cities, in other words, we're not just talking about problems, we're talking about answers. So give us a call, 895-5025, and we'll send you these petitions to stop sanctuary cities in Louisville, and also all of these copies of articles that back up everything that Leo Hohmann has said in his book. We need to hear from you. 895-5025, and we'll send you all of this. It says in your book here is that George Soros funded a lot of this movement to put more and more Muslims who hate America into America. But on the other hand, all of the Christian people who are being massacred in the Middle East, he doesn't want any of them in here, and neither does Obama.
Exactly.
That's, absolutely 100% true. Syrian refugees, we heard a lot about them. Well, 10% of Syria's population is Christian. You would think at the very least,
right,
10% of the Syrian refugees would have been Christian, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Well, less than 1% that made it to America from Syria have been Christian. It's really appalling what has been going on for the last 8 years. And it's right down the line. I mean, it's just every country. We see Iraq, 75% have been Muslim. Somalia, 100% coming from there are Muslim. Just looked up Kentucky in my database, and so far this fiscal year, which we're about, 9 or 10 months into the fiscal year, you guys have received 705 people from jihadist countries into Kentucky just in the last 9 or 10 months. If I were to research it back to, say, 9/11, which is as far back as the database goes for the U.S. State Department, I would probably find thousands. have come into Kentucky from these same jihadist countries: Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Sudan, Afghanistan. These are 100% dangerous countries, and these people are being flown in at the invitation of the U.S. government without the permission or even the knowledge of the local communities here in America.
We brought in over 3,000 from Somalia into Louisville, Kentucky.
Somalia alone.
The last several years. And they're bringing with them a narcotic called KHAT, cat.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody in our law enforcement knows what it is or what it looks like or has any knowledge of it. And Bowling Green, Kentucky, and other cities, small communities, have been inundated with it. In fact,
right. Where is Rand Paul on this issue? He, in his first term in office, in the first couple of years in office, he was speaking out against this destructive refugee resettlement that's being done on the sneak without the knowledge or approval of the American people. He was speaking out about it. But, the longer he was in there, after a few years, he shut up, and we no longer hear Rand Paul talk about the evils of refugee resettlement. And see, this is what happens to politicians, even the best ones, when they go to Washington.
Exactly, but he's from Bowling Green, Kentucky,
yes,
which is
that's his hometown, I know.
It's a hotbed of it.
Yeah.
He knows, he has to know all about the havoc being wreaked in that community by refugee resettlement.
Right. Another point that's really good in your book, it says a lot of the bad things that Obama did came from United Nations policy statements.
Absolutely.
United Nations is behind a lot of this stuff that's going on.
The United Nations sets the agenda. They often come out with documents that set the agenda, and we don't see the fruits of that agenda for years afterwards. This document that I was reading from a little bit ago was authored in 2000. That's 17 years ago. Before my book came out and before I started reporting on this policy of replacing America, changing America by changing its people. About 2 years ago, 2015, 2014, the latter part is when I started. Before that, there was not a single national reporter writing about this.
Wow.
And then my book came out the first of this year, January 2017. Hopefully, a lot of people who wouldn't normally read my articles at WND will get a hold of this book.
Absolutely.
And find out what's going on.
I got my Judicial Watch magazine a couple of days ago, and on the front page, on the front cover, was an article about George Soros, and it says Obama has given several $1 million to George Soros so that they can attack the government in just above Greece. What is that? Macedonia.
Yes.
And they're giving our tax money to George Soros.
That's going on all over the world. Obama, remember, he tried to influence Israel's election. He's trying to influence Macedonia.
Okay, our time is up. God bless you, Leo, and thanks a lot for your wonderful book.